Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by FlexiCharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Welcome to a new episode of the ChargePoint podcast. My name is Christophe and I'm from FlexiCharge. Today we're talking about one of those topics that many CPOs know is important, but that still often feels complex, risky, and maybe even a little abstract: demand response and flexibility. My guest is Lars Herre from Fortum, formerly part of the Hyven.Energy team. And what I really enjoy in this conversation is that Lars brings both the technical depth and the strategic perspective. His journey started early. As a teenager watching An Inconvenient Truth, he decided he wanted to work on climate change, and that led him to electrical engineering, power systems, energy markets, eventually EV flexibility. The core question we explore is simple: what happens when a charging site is no longer just a load on the grid, but becomes an active system lever? For CPOs, this matters because the business is changing. Selling kilowatt-hours is still the foundation, but it may not be enough in the long run. Grid capacity is getting tighter, energy prices are more volatile, flexibility markets are evolving, batteries are becoming more relevant, and V2G is moving from vision to reality. Lars is very clear that demand response may not hurt you tomorrow if you ignore it, but if you are not building systems that are ready for it, you may lose out over time. So in this episode, we discuss where the value really is, why pilots are not always as small as they look, what CPOs often misunderstand about flexibility, and why standardization, forecasting, partnerships, and mindset may matter more than the technology itself. Let's dive in.
Hi, Christophe.
Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great, you could take the time. So before we dive into today's topic, exciting topic of demand response, can you please introduce yourself, in particular your origin story, which I like to hear? Like, what did you do, everything you did before the position where you are today?
So I would probably start at the point that I was 16 years old.
Yes.
Watching the movie Inconvenient Truth from Al Gore. And in my youthful naivety, that one pointed me towards wanting to do something against climate change.
Nice.
And that's ultimately what drove me to study what I studied, electric engineering, and then to work in power systems ever since. I've then spent quite a lot of time at universities in Netherlands, Germany, US, Sweden, and Denmark. Where I really dive deep into demand response, especially in Stockholm and Denmark. I then worked for a utility on the European power system market modeling, really high level, and recently explored this from a venture perspective, in a venture delivering aggregation and flexibility services for EV steering.
Nice. That's very complete. Interesting vision, yeah, you got as a 16-year-old. That's impressive. Kind of an early wake up. Fascinating. Great. So let's now dive into what you do today at Fortum, right? So you work every day with demand response and flexibility. So if you had to explain your job in a few sentences, so what problem are you actually solving for your customers and the overall energy system?
I would say I'm helping customers to electrify while preventing the grid from running into limits. So what that means specifically for customers, that I help to turn uncontrollable assets into something that customers can monetize. And for the grid, it means that I help to delay the costly grid infrastructure upgrades by providing flexibility. And ultimately, the goal that we're all working for is making the energy transition economically and financially viable.
Right. Very clear. Thank you for the introduction. So from your perspective, let's look a bit back. what has changed most in the last 2-3 years that suddenly makes demand response, well, I would say unavoidable for CPOs, but you might want to have a maybe different point of view.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of things that have been going on recently. I think most important from what I see is that customers have become much more educated and aware of electricity prices and how they're formed due to recent gas crisis, now oil price spiking, all of this having an impact on how energy markets behave, how the prices behave, especially in the Nordics. You see the prices, if they change, you see that on a 15-minute level now on your electricity bill. Right. The second thing that has changed is that the flexibility scale-ups have really established their right to play. Companies like Tibber, Kraken, Mobility House, they have established their position in the value chain and manifested that. Then one thing that gives me a headache day to day is regulation, where there have been a lot of ambitions set on European level and on national level, but then in implementation that often is lagging behind, and that reflects on what kind of roles you can take as a new actor in the markets. Another thing that I would say has recently really changed is generative AI. And I know that that's a buzzword, but there's this saying that Gen AI is the death of the SaaS model of software as a service, because it's now so much easier to write code. And that affects what kind of business models are viable and kind of easily creatable. And now specifically this year, I'm just coming back from a V2G conference in Germany, where I met one of your colleagues as well.
And CTO was there, yeah, that's right.
And what I think is really clear now that vehicle to grid is not a vision anymore, but we have now really big partnerships, usually of utilities and OEMs, BMW and E.ON in Germany, Volvo and Vattenfall in Sweden. So this is really being launched. And one really interesting thing I heard actually from Octopus is they were thinking that they would first get the techies, the tech nerds, but they actually by accident addressed the mass market with V2G. So it's not anymore a vision, but it's here.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a lot of things, elements. Well, I can hear the regulation sounds more like pulling down, but the rest is pushing in this direction, right? So would you concur with me that it makes it now demand response is unavoidable for CPOs, or what's your position on this?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's unavoidable really. I would probably say that in the long run, if as a CPO, if you're not ready for it, and if you're not creating a system that is scalable for demand response, you're probably losing out in the long run. I guess you wouldn't feel the direct impacts in the short term, but
right, yeah,
it's a long-term strategy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, I'm pushing a bit, saying unavoidable, but I think it's about preparing yourself today for at least the end of the decade and beyond, where I think we can say that many CPOs are doing great, making a nice business on selling just the kilowatt hours today, but they will need more in the future, and there is more to get. Yeah. All right, let's talk a bit more demand response and make it a bit tangible for our audience. So many CPOs still hear demand response, and then they think complexity and risk. In simple terms, so what does a well-designed, as you said, demand response setup actually do to a charging site?
Yeah, risk is an interesting concept, because especially in energy utilities, there's always risk and opportunity. They're they're two sides of the same coin. And so risk can carry the downside, but it also definitely carries the upside. So you can hear how I'm thinking about this already. I have a background in optimization, so I'm thinking about this as an optimization problem with demand response. Like you have an objective that you want to reach, which is minimizing cost or maximizing revenues. And then you have constraints that you have to satisfy, and those constraints are like the site logistics. They're maybe coming from the uncertainty of not knowing how many cars are going to be plugged in at what time. Constraints are coming from the energy market side, minimum volume that you have to place there, and so on. So a well-designed system respects those constraints, especially towards the end users, and maximizes the revenue that you can generate from demand response. It's maybe a bit theoretical response, but this is my kind of framework of thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. No, but it helps to set the stage. Absolutely, yeah. And maybe if you think about the different conversation you've been having or reading about, maybe about those misconceptions, I really like to discuss that. So what would be the biggest misconception that CPOs have about demand response when they first look into it?
So this is something where I'm probably leaning a bit out of the window, because I've worked with some CPOs, but my background is more in general flexibility, also in the residential domain. But what I would mention two things, and that one thing is regulatory again, that the regulatory complexity isn't an easy nut to crack, and it keeps changing. So there's different market actor roles that you have to fulfill if you want to participate in certain markets. So you need to either become that actor, or you need to partner with an actor. Mm-hmm. When you partner with them, you need to consider is there like some fee that I need to pay to that partner? Is that fee even worth it anymore to then do demand response? So that's the first thing, regulation. The second one is the idea that you can separate different objectives or different goals. I mean, you have the site logistics, and then you have the flexibility. So one is a very like physical constraints, one is the energy market operation. You can kind of prioritize one over the other or separate them, but you wouldn't get the optimal outcome if you don't optimize them together. The same with if you optimize purely behind the meter towards spot prices, or whether you optimize towards flex or local markets. If you do that sequentially or separate, you won't get the optimal. And lastly, probably quite important for CPOs is the forecasting. The type of forecast and how you forecast impacts how well you perform with demand response in the energy markets. And you can't really separate the forecast from the bidding and operations. So, I mean, in short, it's all connected. You can separate it if you need to, but you will not be the best if you're separating those objectives.
Interesting. Thanks for that perspective. Before we continue with the show, here's a quick recommendation. If today's topic of battery-backed charging resonates with you, make sure to check out our webinar, The Power of Co-located Batteries, Unlocking the Full Revenue Potential. We explore how CPOs can turn batteries from a grid support tool into a strategic asset, combining power boosting, peak shaving arbitrage, and flexibility markets. Because the real value of BESS is not just doing one thing really well, it is stacking use cases intelligently. You'll find the webinar on the FlexCharge website, on the resources, and the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the show. So where do you usually see the first real value for CPOs if you again, share your position? Is it about avoiding grid cost? Is it about enabling more chargers per site or accessing flexibility revenues?
That's a really, really timely question now. Especially, I'm located in Stockholm in Sweden, so here I would have probably given a different answer a few months ago than I'm giving now, because there was this introduction of an effect tariff, a peak power tariff, mm-hmm. for electricity consumers, where you would pay on top of the electricity that you're paying for, you would pay a fee that is calculated based on the maximum usage of the grid per month. Mm-hmm. So optimizing for that would have been really, really simple actually to do, and probably the quickest cost savings. Now that is rolled back, so I can't mention that anymore. If we go even further back, I would have picked FCR, like between 2018 and 2022. This was like the golden age of FCR in the Nordics. that has also crashed. So right now,
FCR, just again to refresh everybody in the audience, can you just elaborate just 30 seconds on FCR?
Yeah, so when we talk about flex markets, we usually mean the officially ancillary service markets, where you have very fast reacting frequency reserves that help the grid, and then slower reacting ones. And one of the fastest ones is FCR, frequency containment reserves. And on the slower end, you have MFR, manual frequency restoration reserves. Yeah, they have different kind of processes how to participate, and different prices, of course. And FCR had extremely lucrative prices back then. And it's also a market where you don't have to, you basically get paid for sitting around with your EV being plugged in, and the ability to start charging or stop charging when needed. Yeah. Whilst most of the time you don't need to activate that ability. So it was a very kind of easy market to go into and to earn quite a lot of money.
Yeah, sounds almost too good to be true. Yeah, and of course, that's why it also, as you said, the golden age is behind. Yeah. So today, if you take a bit of broader perspective, I know the countries have different situations. So as you mentioned, the effect tariff, the power demand charges are not applicable in all markets. It's not relevant in Denmark, for example. So, but again, just to round up on the question, so where do you see the first real value? Is the answer it depends, or how do you sum up?
Probably I would go for it depends in the end.
Depends, yeah. Case by case, yeah. Country by country.
I mean, not only by country and market by market, but also it depends on the partnerships, I would say. Mm-hmm. So if you strongly partner with an energy utility, for instance, you could also try to do some kind of active imbalance management for the utility. So it depends which kind of market actors you are partnering with as well.
Makes sense. Totally. So let's talk a bit about moving from pilot to scalable business, because this is a bit where everybody is, right? So at what scale does demand response actually start to matter financially for CPO with your, again, knowledge of the CPO business?
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think there's a limit like 2 megawatts or so, but probably once you cross into the megawatt scale, you can see financial impact. Mm-hmm. I would say the scale is more organizational than technical. From what I see, at least, if you have a scalable solution and you build a pilot, then it's fairly easy to technically scale up from there. Mm-hmm. What is often more of an issue is like physical rollout, commercial agreements, and those kind of wraps around it, the organizational limits.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, the real value for me is in the optionality then to not just be able to do one thing in a pilot, like do a pilot with FCR, for instance, mm-hmm. but show that you can be active in all kinds of flexibility. So you have the optionality when value moves from one market to the other to just move with the value.
To be able to move and capture where the value is, as you said, FCR being now not as attractive as it was, so you move on to the next year. So having more agility. Yeah. So, and what according to you, what separates a nice pilot? Okay, good start, and from a demand response setup, is it? What is it? Is it this agility? Is it automation? What is it?
Yeah. So maybe first I would maybe challenge the idea of pilot a bit, because I've been in a lot of conversations where the first step is let's do a pilot. But then as a technology provider, when we do a pilot, we've pretty much done 98% of the work. So that it's not like a low cost thing to just do a pilot and then decide.
I hear you.
But usually, as a technology provider, we want to do the whole thing right away, and we're building the pilot in a scalable way, so it can be scaled up. But then on your question, you mentioned automation. I would maybe say automation / standardization. Mm-hmm. What I see as really important is to build a solution that is not only working on a specific site with specific framework around it of how this charge point is working and what the logistics of the site are, but to build a standardizable solution that can accommodate different things, whether it's like bus charging, taxi charging, public charging.
Right.
Set it up in a standardized,
replicable. So don't work on a pilot on a site which is really specific or kind of an outlier versus the rest of your network and stations.
Right. And then one thing that would enable a lot more flexibility, especially for charge point operators, I believe, is if you can improve your forecasting, right? For especially public charge points, I guess there's a lot of uncertainty when cars are arriving, what state of charge they're arriving with, and that impacts how you can leverage demand response. If you can improve those forecasts in different ways, either by better models or maybe even partnering with Google Maps where people are looking for charge points or so, I think that's where you can unlock additional value.
Makes sense. So from what you see, so let's come back a bit to the organizational perspective. So what organizational capability does a CPO need most to succeed with demand response? Is it tech, data, partnerships, mindset?
So I would say mindset, but I mean I'm coming from the technical perspective, and so for me technically everything is solvable, and so that's kind of the easy thing and probably the most overrated. But I would say the mindset shift from just protecting the charging, okay, we need to charge, someone is arriving, we need to charge as fast as possible, to more of a grid interactive asset as a charge point. I think that is a mindset shift that enables you to think a bit broader and a bigger framework, not purely as loading the battery. Exactly.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. It's this shift of role. Yeah. And self-perception. What am I as a CPO? What kind of business am I in? Absolutely. If we look a bit ahead, 3 to 5 years, super difficult, I know, in our industry. But, to the best of your abilities and crystal ball, how do you see the role of CPOs evolving in the energy system? Is it what you described, having this approach, shift this mindset and become energy companies? How do you see it?
So I think there's a lot of scenarios that could come out of those. And again, I'm coming back to regulation. That's the biggest kind of guiding factor in my view. What will the regulation allow CPOs to become? One kind of grand scenario could be that CPOs become almost like a utility, a whole energy infrastructure operator. I think that might happen, but it might be completely blocked by regulation. And this crystal ball of regulation is pretty hard to crack.
Oh yeah.
Another thing that seems to be kind of default in the near future is that charge points will just have a battery, a BESS installed as well. So if that becomes the default, then basically you can just use the BESS mainly for demand response or for flexibility. But then the challenge is, what do you need the chargers for in that case? So then, I mean, the scenario could be that charge point operators kind of naturally evolve from the main business being a charge point operator into a battery storage system operator, where on the side there's also some charge point operations because it's a nice synergy, but the main operation is just battery development and operation.
So, large scale demand response business. Interesting, yeah, and the regulation also, yeah, that remains to be seen, yeah. Let's see, hopefully making the right decisions in Brussels for the future of Europe and the energy system.
Yeah, and it's not only Brussels, right? I mean, so the EU is making these kind of directives. Then those directives are set in place, and then each member state looks at them and is wondering how to implement them. And that's, in my view, where most of the mess comes from. I don't want to blame Brussels here.
No, but it's okay.
I think it comes down to the fact that there's a lot of freedom on the national level, which might be good, but the coordination between those national level implementations is missing in my view.
Yeah, that we can only wish that it improves. I mean, it is one energy system. It's about cables going across country, region to region. It has to work as one big energy system, definitely.
Right.
So, if you were advising a CPO starting today in this area, what's the one decision they should make now to not regret it in 5 years within this space?
I would say standardization. Create some solution that can scale, not only for the use case on this one site or with this one customer, but looking broadly into charging. I mean, not just public charging, but whatever, bus terminal, truck terminal charging, taxi charging. How can you set up the system in a way that it can scale easily for any customer in any market in any country? So yeah, it already sounds complex, but if you design for that complexity and allow whatever complexity is on the customer, on the specific site, to be represented in a general way in your own technology stack, I think that can leverage a lot, that EV charging will not be treated as a load anymore, but as a system lever.
Exactly. Not as a load anymore, but as a system lever.
And if you do that too late, it will be exponentially harder to implement the standardization compared to designing for it from the beginning. Yeah.
So again, you got to start ASAP, even though the big value is maybe first coming later, but you got to be ready to scale or implement at scale. Yeah. Maybe a last question. Do you see demand response becoming a hygiene factor, like load management is today?
Well, likely. Probably the first thing is, yes, supported by batteries. So I can really see that the batteries are becoming sort of the standard pack for charge point operators as well. And then I assume that there would be some transition phase where in the beginning demand response is a differentiator, and then at some point it will be the expectation from CPOs to do it, and in the long run then it would become a hygiene factor. But it could be years, and it doesn't show up, it only shows up gradually, but then when it hits, it hurts. Flexibility will probably be the baseline that you compare to in the future.
Lars, it was a pleasure chatting with you, and looking forward to following your work at Fortum, and wishing you a great afternoon. Thanks,
Christophe.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
So, what do we take away from this conversation with Lars? For me, the big learning is that demand response is not just a technical feature. It is a new way of thinking about what a charging site actually is. Today, many CPOs still see their sites primarily as infrastructure for selling kilowatt-hours to drivers, fair enough. And of course, that remains the core business. But Lars invites us to look one layer deeper. A charging site is also a flexible energy asset. It can help customers electrify without pushing the grid beyond its limits. It can reduce costs. It can create new value. And if designed correctly, it can become part of the wider energy system. The second learning is that flexibility is not only about opportunity, it is about constraints. A good demand response setup does not simply chase market revenues. It respects the driver experience, the site logistics, the grid connection, the energy market rules, and the uncertainty of who arrives when and with what battery level. In other words, the winners will not be the CPOs that optimize one piece of the puzzle, but those that can optimize the whole system. The third learning is that pilots are not enough. Lars made a very important point here. If you build a pilot, much of that real work has already been done. So the question should not only be, can we test this on one site? The question should be, can we standardize it, automate it, replicate it, and scale it across our portfolio? And looking ahead, this is where things become really interesting. Virtual power plants, batteries, V2G, local flexibility markets, dynamic tariffs. All of these point in the same direction. EV charging will increasingly move from passive consumption to active participation. CPOs may not all become energy companies in the same way, and regulation will strongly shape what is possible. But the direction is clear. Flexibility will gradually move from differentiator to expectation. So perhaps the message for CPOs is this. You do not need to capture every flexibility revenue stream tomorrow, but you need to build the capability today. Because once flexibility becomes the baseline, it will be much harder to retrofit it into systems that were never designed for it. And that is probably the strongest takeaway from this episode. The future CPO will not only operate chargers, it will operate intelligent, flexible, grid interactive assets. And before you go, if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to support the ChargePoint podcast. Give it a 5-star rating, write a short review, and share it with a colleague, a customer, or a partner who's thinking about the future of EV charging and flexibility. It really helps the podcast reach more people in the industry, and it helps us keep bringing you this conversation with the people shaping the future of charging. Drive safely, and see you next time.